Thank you for joining us. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach. Thank you for joining our next edition of our 49er Industry Chat. Before we start, we would like to let you know this session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csuob.edu/alumni. We also encourage you to use our Q&A box located below to submit any questions you have for our guest speaker today. And now I would like to introduce our moderator for the chat, Niall Rogers. Niall is a proud alumnus of Long Beach State, graduating in 2014 with a BA in American Studies. After graduation, he has remained involved at the beach and currently is an active volunteer with the Alumni Office. Niall, thank you so much for moderating the chat today. And now I pass it on to you.
Well, thank you so much, Noemi, and welcome everyone to another exciting edition of the 49er Industry Chat Series, courtesy of California State University alumni. Again, my name is Niall, class of 2015, degree in American Studies, and I'll be moderating the conversation today. As a reminder to our listeners, yes, of course, should you have any questions, please put them in the questions and answers chat box down at the bottom, and I'll make sure to try and include them into the discussion today. And it's my pleasure to introduce our subject for today's 49er Industry Chat, Mr. Joey Mason. Joey is a proud Cal State Long Beach alumni holding a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science. He's a software engineer, an entrepreneur who co-founded and served as CTO of Repost Network, a music distribution startup that was acquired by the streaming platform, which we all know of, SoundCloud, back in 2019. Currently, he's serving as the Vice President of Engineering at SoundCloud, where he oversees, I believe, product development for the company's Creator Services division, and he can expand more on that. Joey was featured in Forbes 2019 30 Under 30. So please welcome today's 49er Industry Chat, Joey Mason. Joey, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I threw together a quick little presentation just to start us off, give you some context on my background, how I got to where I'm at today. And then I think from there, it sounds like we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A / discussion with Niall. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. I'm going to share my screen. Cool. Can everyone see this?
Yes, that looks good.
Cool. All right. So a little bit about me. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach in 2013. As Niall mentioned, I studied computer science. Currently live in Los Angeles. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Jamie Mason, who's also a Cal State Long Beach alumnus. And I'm currently serving as VP of Engineering for SoundCloud. Some of my hobbies include music, obviously, at SoundCloud. Love to travel. Spent a lot of time in Berlin, obviously, because SoundCloud's headquartered there. And then I'm a huge snowboarding addict, so try to go snowboarding as much as possible. Let's see. A little bit about my experience at Cal State Long Beach. I attended from 2008 to 2013, so it took me 5 years. Part of the reason for that is I actually did a semester abroad studying in Hamburg, Germany, which was a really great experience. I dabbled in a minor in German. I didn't quite complete, but I definitely enjoyed my time while I was at Cal State Long Beach. And I also did 3 internships, which I think were really instrumental in setting me up for success. First was at a company called US Hybrid, second at a company called MST Software, and then finally DirecTV, all of which were software engineering internships, helped me gain experience, and I think were just really instrumental for me. Some highlights, when I went into Cal State Long Beach, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I declared as a business major, if I remember correctly. And somehow I got this interest in engineering, and I took a computer science class, and I realized at that moment, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I went and switched majors the very next semester. So I definitely owe Cal State Long Beach for helping me introduce me to software engineering. And I also think, studying abroad broadened my horizons, made me think about the world differently. So I owe that to that experience. And ultimately, yeah, I gained a ton of technical skills that set me up for success, and I met some great people, and ultimately met my now wife. So really enjoyed my time at Cal State Long Beach. After college, I moved to LA My internship at DirecTV transitioned to a full-time opportunity, which is always like the best case scenario if you can make that happen. They actually brought me on my senior year where I was working like maybe 20 hours a week. So it was like a really smooth transition, which is great. But once I got into the corporate world, working at a massive company, I kind of realized that what I was passionate about was really more startups and building things. And so kind of took a leap of faith, but I quit that job. My dad at the time told me that was like a really bad idea. You should never quit a job until you have something else lined up. But I don't know, I did it and it ended up working out. I got picked up by a company called FreedomPop, which unfortunately is not around anymore, but they were a wireless internet service provider, sort of like a Cricket or like a Boost Mobile, similar to that, where it was, we were building a cell phone service provider on top of Sprint's network, like wholesale. So it was really exciting time for me because I was all of a sudden thrown on a team of like 8 engineers building out product from scratch. And it sort of was like a light bulb effect for me in terms of what's possible to do with software. So I worked there for 2 years, just, busted my ass the whole time, honestly, to get as good at engineering as possible, with the eventual goal of starting my own company. I knew that I was sort of, the end game for me was I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know how, but I knew that if I focused on just being a really, really good engineer, that would open up some paths for me. And sure enough, in 2015, I met my now co-founder, Jeff Ponchik. You can see him, the thumbs up sign on the bottom down here, on the bottom right. And we actually met in a bar in West Hollywood through a mutual friend. And we just became, at first, just friends. Like Jeff was working at a company called Fullscreen, which provided monetization opportunities and brand opportunities for YouTubers. And we thought that was pretty cool. And then we saw that SoundCloud was also, if you look at YouTube at the time was this open video platform that was scaling like crazy and was starting to introduce monetization opportunities. And then we looked over at SoundCloud and we saw, SoundCloud's kind of similar to YouTube, and they have millions of creators uploading music and not a lot of money being made yet. So what if we tried to solve that problem? And so we put our heads together. We decided we were going to build a simple product that would let anyone on SoundCloud monetize their music. And it sounds simple, but underneath the hood, there was a lot of like legal work. There's a lot of rights management understanding we had to learn, but we just kind of knew that was a niche we could fill. And we literally started signing people up for this service before the product was even ready. So we could tell there was demand. It was actually like super exciting time. So I quit my job. We went and raised capital from Amplify LA, which is it's an early stage accelerator in LA where they fund early stage startups. We were able to raise a little bit of money, quit our jobs, and do it full time. And then from there, we just started building. And we grew the company from just us in a cubicle to eventually being 20 or so people. I'm skipping over a lot of really good content there, but long story short, we built a really successful business. And we got an exit to SoundCloud. So SoundCloud came in and basically said, we love what you're doing. You're working with all the same creators that are on SoundCloud now. We think that this could be a really awesome part of the broader SoundCloud ecosystem. And it was sort of a situation where 2 + 2 = 5. Like we have this really good artist services business. SoundCloud has millions and millions of users. If we combine these, there's going to be an exponential increase in value for creators. So that was the ethos. We were super happy to join the SoundCloud team. It was just a very, very much a massive success for us, I would say. It was also recognized on Forbes 30 Under 30, which I think you mentioned, which is an amazing honor and sort of like a surreal moment for me as an entrepreneur. And then, so currently I work at SoundCloud. I'm the VP of engineering for creator services, which is a fancy way of saying I oversee the product and engineering in Los Angeles. Our mission is it's effectively what we were doing before, except with way more scale. So we want to be able to enable all the musicians in the world to monetize their music and run their careers. That's the high level objective. And I think we're doing a really good job at it. We're growing really quickly and just able to help a lot of people. So very happy to have landed here. And it's a lot of interesting challenges when you're dealing with millions of users as opposed to tens of thousands, which is the situation before. So I think that's probably a good run through, and maybe we can kick it over back to Niall now and do more of a Q&A.
Well, I think, thank you so much, Joey, for sharing that. And I mean, what a tremendous journey to go from, I mean, in the last, like, what, 15 years or so, right? I mean, less than that, to go from a graduate at Cal State Long Beach all the way into the position that you're holding right now with such a global company, with such a global reach as SoundCloud. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So like with SoundCloud, you mentioned that it helps artists monetize their art form and their music. So how does that monetization model work? And is that's something that you guys created at Repost, right? And then brought that over to SoundCloud, or how does that all work?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's very complicated. I'll say that the music industry is way more complicated than it should be.
And that's why they needed you, a mind like yourself, right?
I would say, like, going into this, I didn't know anything about the music industry. So I still don't really feel like I'm an expert, but I do have a lot of weird knowledge about how things work. But yeah, basically in the music industry, you have rights holders who traditionally they're the record labels, or now there's indie rights holders. You have what we call DSPs, which are Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, the streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have in the middle distributors, which are the middlemen between the two. So when we were doing Repost, we were really focusing in on being the distributor. So basically, we never took ownership over any content. We still don't do that, but that was like a sort of a rule we had, was we were just going to be facilitating, connecting indie artists into the stores. We would just operate on a revenue share model. But basically, yeah, what we do is we take up and coming artists who want to maximize their revenue, and then we help them distribute their content into all the different stores. And this is all fully automated.
Mm-hmm.
And then we provide artist marketing services on top of that. So like, if you're really high, let's say Niall, you're a musician, you're doing really well, you have a growing audience, and we're working with Kia, like, let's get you in a Kia commercial, things like that. So we can sort of pepper in those other opportunities on top of it. But under the hood, it's really a technical solution.
Yeah. But that's really great, because I imagine for a lot of artists, a lot of that is out of reach, especially for newer artists who don't have necessarily the backing or the capital or the connections. So you guys are helping to solve that problem for them, that challenge. So that's really interesting. That's very cool. Going back to what I really liked about your kind of your origin story, as it were. What I really liked is that when you went to Cal State Long Beach, you kind of didn't know what you wanted to do, right? You said you were just a business major. You probably just chose that because it seemed like that's what people do, right? And I think that's what a lot of people do. They just choose something, but they don't really know what they want to do and how their careers kind of play out. I feel like that's really interesting. You said you took a computer science class and didn't realize how much that like aligned with your thinking, your thought process, maybe like your skill set?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think that's maybe the main thing to do in college, is to figure out what you actually want to do. Going in, I think I was interested in law, I was interested in business. I had never, ever thought about doing computer engineering. That was probably the last thing I thought I would do. It was just sort of by chance. I have to wonder.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
If I didn't take that class, then my life trajectory would have been so different.
Yeah, who knows what you'd be doing? Yeah.
Yeah, so I would encourage, like, if you have the faintest of interest in programming, give it a shot, because if you're the right person, it'll just click with you and you'll become obsessed with it, like I did.
Right. That's kind of the benefit of electives, right? Is that you can kind of choose whatever you have somewhat of an interest in. You can kind of just pick and choose, and you never know what's really going to resonate with your skill set, and your interests. So that's really interesting.
Absolutely.
So like, what advice do you have for students that want to explore your industry? So I guess it would be kind of like a computer science, pseudo music industry. And how important is it to have like a mentor as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, firstly, if you're thinking about getting into tech, there's a really good tweet. I can't remember who tweeted this, but it was sort of like, everyone wants to be in tech, but no one wants to be technical. I think if you want to set yourself up for success being in tech, just learn how to code, even if it's a little bit. It's like the technology has gotten to the point now where you can build things really easily. Like you can learn how to do simple scripting, and I've seen people take that skill and then apply it to other jobs that aren't even technical. If you're able to automate little things, just kind of like changes the way you think about problem solving in general. I would say, yeah, my advice would be take some basic computer science classes. I think that there's, especially with the way the world's going, it's just going to add value to you as a business person or in your job. In terms of mentorship, yeah, I think that if you want to level up quickly, having someone who can provide you things that maybe you wouldn't see. I actually use an executive coach for this, like someone who just helps me think about problems differently and has a different perspective. I think someone with more experience that can coach you is there's no substitute for that. Like even, executives at all different levels have coaches for a reason. Like it adds a lot of value.
Right. I feel someone with a lot of experience and at a level in their field, a mentor is a very, very nice thing to be able to have, someone to go to help you with those challenges as they present themselves. Because you imagine if those things are presenting themselves to you, they've probably presented themselves to this person multiple times. So to get their guidance is key and necessary.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, most problems have already been solved.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, like, what are some of you mentioned like technical skills, but like if you were to go into more detail, I know you mentioned about coding. You said that's very important. If you're interested at all in computer science, that coding is very important to study. What are some like technical skills, maybe even some classes or proficiencies that you found have benefited you most? Maybe even courses you took at Cal State Long Beach that you feel have resonated within your career to make you as successful as you've become.
Yeah, I mean, so my career path is obviously very engineering. I'm extremely technical. It's like my job to be super technical. So this probably doesn't apply to everyone, but if you're an engineer, I would say the computer science fundamentals. I took some classes at Cal State Long Beach that were so difficult, honestly, so tough. But like, I like to think that getting an engineering degree is really hard, but what it really teaches you is how to problem solve and how to be okay when things feel like they're way too difficult and how to get through that. Sort of like if you're able to get through some of these classes, it's like when you get to a challenge at work, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna figure this out. It gives you a level of confidence. So I think there's that. But in general, like if you want to be a good software engineer, understand the picture of what it takes to build an application at scale. So something that we interview a lot for is, does someone understand all the different pieces of what goes into making something? Do they understand? Maybe you're a backend engineer, but if you can understand, how front-end engineering works or how Android apps work or how they all piece together, I think that gives you a leg up. So I would encourage you to do that. And I would also, again, if you're trying to be a really good software engineer, just focus on the fundamentals, like really understand the theory behind why computers work the way they do, and with algorithms and with data structures, things like that. I think that it goes a long way when you're dealing with more complex problems to understand that. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think it does. Yeah, that was good. And then so someone even asked from the audience in the Q&A, they asked, do you know like a simple computer science course outside of college that they can get their feet wet with? Or are there groups outside of, I can expand upon that. Maybe there's groups that you're part of that for people who are into computer science, or maybe their interest is piqued, but they don't know yet if they want to invest a full, semester of college into this profession. Like what groups are you part of? What classes have you participated in or know about? I mean, I know Khan Academy is like an open source university that someone can go and just, watch a YouTube video and maybe about coding to see if, oh, that maybe interests me, or C++, or, so, but do you have any recommendations for someone with that question?
Yeah, I would say, what's the one you just referenced, Code Academy?
Yeah, Khan Academy. Yeah.
Khan Academy. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
there's a few. There's Udemy. There's a couple. I think those are really good resources. I think you have to figure out what style of learning works for you. For me, it's actually books is what does it for me. So I read a lot of software engineering books, and then I try to apply them like just at home on my computer.
Yeah.
But YouTube videos are amazing too if you can watch them. Like honestly, if you're just starting out, just pick a language, something like maybe Node.js or JavaScript, I should say,
Mhm.
and just start watching some YouTube videos. Take a couple courses. Front end development is really easy to get started with. You can do it on your computer and pull up something in a web browser and start to hack on that. That's like a really good way to get your feet wet, and then kind of expand from there. There's also boot camps, which are really popular now. We're seeing a lot of that in the industry where people maybe they don't have a computer science degree, but they want to get a crash course. They actually have they're like 3 to 6 months intense courses where you do coding all day. I have friends who've done that and then gotten jobs
Mhm.
at Uber
Wow.
or Postmates or companies like that that need to hire lots of engineers, and it's like a really good way to get your feet in the door.
Mhm. I think those are all really good suggestions.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that after working as a software engineer at DirecTV, you started working at FreedomPop. Was that as a software engineer as well?
Yeah, that's right. FreedomPop was a very early stage start. I think it was maybe 30 people when I got there. It's sort of in massive hiring mode. And yeah, I was one of maybe 8 engineers. So it was sort of like the opposite of what I had at DirecTV, where
Yeah.
DirecTV it was massive company, thousands of people, and you're kind of working on this tiny little thing. At FreedomPop, it was sort of like, oh, there's all these different things to work on. What do you want to do first?
Right.
So
Being
I was
such a
able to
small
just,
company.
yeah, you're just able to wear so many hats. I honestly think I love working at startups. It's the best because you get exposed to so many different problems to solve, and you kind of, if you thrive in that environment, you can learn so much.
Right. And so the part that really interested me there is that it seemingly looks like when I'm looking over your career trajectory, that was a big risk at the time. Like, would you agree that you moving from DirecTV to FreedomPop was a big risk? And then if so, like what energized you? Like, I get the sense that you're very self-determined and self-motivated, and you want to have like a personal investment in your career, and not just be told what to do, but be like an active part of the trajectory of the company for which you're working. But can you talk about that decision to go from DirecTV over to FreedomPop and like what that was like?
Yeah. I'm trying to put myself back into 2014 where my head was at, or 2013, whatever it was.
You didn't have a mask on at that time. At least I don't think so. Yeah.
No. For me at the time, I was trying to balance, my own career goals in terms of, leveling up with finding a team and a structure that was fun. That makes sense. So like, I
Yeah.
didn't want to take a step backwards and go work on something that what I wasn't gonna love. I wasn't gonna learn anything, but also like, so I had to balance that. FreedomPop was a good mix because I knew when I wasn't taking a bump in salary, which I think is never take a bump in salary unless you feel really confident on it. So I didn't have to worry about that. I knew that I was going to be coding more and programming more and building more. So I knew from the get-go, I was like, okay, this is going to level me up over the next 2 years. I'm going to learn this, and this. And I like had that sorted out before I made the jump, or before I accepted the offer. And then, yeah, just the people that I was working with were really nice. And there's some sort of epic people that I got to work with that I knew I was going to learn a lot from. So all those things went into the calculation in my head.
Yeah. It
I
seems
was
like
also interviewing at like Facebook and other companies like that, but I
okay.
ultimately made the decision not to go to one of those bigger companies because I didn't want to be back in like where I was with DirecTV, where I wasn't having any sort of impact. At FreedomPop, I knew I would be close to the fundraising. I would see how that works. I would be close to the marketing department and design, and like I said, at a small company, you wear different hats, so you can assist on different projects, and you kind of just get this more cohesive understanding of how everything fits together.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I've read books about businesses who are very successful, and a lot of them talk about even if they're hiring an engineer, they'll sit them down with the sales team. They'll sit them down with technical support. They try to get them to, as you put it, wear multiple hats so they have a grander idea. They hear from their customer and they know the business model, the circular business model, instead of just maybe just a refined siloed portion of the business. So I think that's part of the benefit of working with a smaller company, right? Is that you get to wear so many hats. You get to see all different aspects. So you get to learn so much. And it seems like you consistently like to challenge yourself and learn more. You know, I get the feeling that it's not about who you know, it's about kind of what you know from you. It's about, I want to be technically proficient, you know, I want to be a good engineer, you know, is what it sounds like, instead of just, I want to, you know, I'm going to leverage a relationship that I have, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's what you ship, right?
Mhm.
Shipping is a term we use in software, but you want to be producing results. That's what excites me. So um, yeah, whatever is going to help you do that. I think you also had a good point around, small company getting exposed to different things. The end goal, I think, is you want to understand, even if you're technical or you're in marketing or whatever, if you can understand the big picture and you can understand what the organization is trying to accomplish, then it's going to give you a total leg up, and you're going to start thinking about not just what do I need in my role, but what does the company need. It's going to set you up for success, and people are going to respect you more for that.
And now, as a vice president, do you find yourself working in a more technical, like, is your day-to-day more technical as it used to be? Or do you find you've transitioned into being a people manager now, where you're managing a team more, as opposed to having your, you know, hand on the computer and actually doing the coding? Like what's your day-to-day more like now?
Yeah, that's funny. It's totally true. Once you start to move up and you do less and less coding and technical work, and like you said, people management, the conversations start to shift more from like, let's look at this line of code, let's like make sure this little piece is working, to more architecture. That makes sense. So like,
Yeah.
this system has to work with this system, and we need to make sure that we're covered here and there. It's just at a higher level, but you're still doing engineering.
Mm-hmm.
You're still it's just on a much broader level, and in a way, without doing the lower level work first, you wouldn't understand how these pieces all fit together and why trade-offs exist. I think that was the interesting thing about going from Repost, and literally just me like in my apartment coding this thing into multiple offices as we grew the team, and being part of the transformation. So going from myself to hiring the first engineer, to hiring 4 engineers, 5 engineers, eventually, team of 20 or whatever. And it's like, every time you have to add another layer or another team, you get a little bit abstracted away. So you have to get more clever about how you know what's going on without actually always being the one doing the work, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to get, something I learned early on was, there's multiple ways to skin a cat, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
you could solve a problem a ton of different ways. And what you have to like shift about how you think about work is, it's not about how they solve the problem, it's just that the problem gets solved.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like an important thing for me to learn as well. If you could think about results rather than how things are getting built, it'll set you up for success.
Right. It's taking Congress from your peers is really important, instead of always thinking that your way is the right way. You know, it's very important to
Yeah.
hear all different opinions, all different views, because yeah, that is tough to realize that you can get to the same answer in multiple different avenues. So
Yeah,
sometimes,
and what value does it provide anyone if you're trying to enforce your way of doing things, that
right.
you actually can like lose good people that way. So you often find that if you're hiring well, you're actually going to be hiring people that are like way smarter than you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tell someone how to do their job. So
Right.
it's an
I've heard
anti-pattern.
Right. I've heard a lot of executives say that they're where they're at because they hire people who are smarter than them. I think that's something Obama had mentioned is that everyone around him, he wanted them to be the smartest people in the room, you know?
Yeah,
So,
if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah.
You need to position yourself better. Well, we got some questions from the audience. So
Sure.
one is, so let's see here. What is any truly honest advice or tips you would give a musician right now on SoundCloud that they should be doing and or aware of?
That's a great question. I would say make sure that your music is in all the stores possible. You know, I think that some people maybe don't want their music to be in Apple Music or Spotify, or you want to be wherever your audience might be, to get as much exposure as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's like number one. I would also say at an early stage, it depends on what stage you're at, but at an early stage, the most important thing to do is to build an audience. Not to say making money isn't important, but just focus on getting that audience, that core audience growth, and getting those really dedicated listeners. And that's going to fuel the rest of your growth once you have that solid bed. And I would qualify all this by saying that I focus more on the engineering, but that's kind of what I've learned over the last 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Oversaturation is the key.
Yeah. I mean, some people want to listen to their music on YouTube, and some people that only want to use Spotify. There's some people that only want to use SoundCloud. You just want to make sure that you're totally covered, and you're not letting any money slip through the cracks, and you're not missing out on any sort of audience that might exist because you didn't distribute to that platform.
Right. And I should say that having done a little bit of research before I was talking, I saw SoundCloud is pretty modern in that even new ventures like TikTok, new platforms like TikTok are part of SoundCloud now. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. So it's actually a really interesting topic because SoundCloud is first and foremost a DSP, but now we're also a distributor because of the acquisition. So it's sort of like a conflict of interest in a way, that we'd be sending our clients to also be on TikTok. But whenever there's like a scenario like that, you have to do what's best for the artist. Mm-hmm. And your music should be on TikTok. Your music should be on Instagram. It should be everywhere. That's what's best for you to be able to grow your audience.
Mm-hmm. And another question from the audience is, with streaming being a focus point now, with platforms like a SoundCloud and a Spotify, YouTube, etc., what trend or direction do you think is next for your industry? Like, where is it going into the future?
Can you repeat that question, actually?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, no, they're asking, I guess, with like the proliferation of these online platforms like a SoundCloud and a YouTube and a Spotify, what's next on the horizon for SoundCloud? Like, what's next on the horizon for a YouTube, I guess? Like, where does it go from here? Because I guess you've gotten a mass democratization of music or video, or even with something like an Etsy where the user is the one contributing content and you guys are helping them distribute, right? So where does that industry go, more specific to SoundCloud, I guess? Where is it going into the future?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's different modes of consumption that are emerging. TikTok is a good example of that. So I think I don't know what those listener experiences are going to be like in the future. I don't have a crystal ball, but there's definitely a shift happening. If you look at TikTok as an example, I would say in general, the trend is music production is easier than it's ever been, which is a fact. Anyone with a laptop can make world-class music now. Like it's just the tools are there. So there's more and more music being made. There's more and more independent artists every day. And there's more and more artists who are retaining ownership of their content and running their own careers using platforms like SoundCloud. So I think those trends are here to stay. And I would say from the SoundCloud perspective, I mean, something we just rolled out that's really interesting and really good for the industry, I think, is fan-powered royalties. So in traditional streaming models, the way royalties work is all the money that gets generated goes into a pot, and then it's broken out by market share. So if you're Taylor Swift and you account for 1% of all the plays, you get 1% of the pot, right? What SoundCloud just rolled out, which is really cool, is for anyone monetizing through Repost or directly with SoundCloud. In phase one, we are flipping it. So if I have a listener who only listens to my music, then the revenue that they generate only goes to me. So it's kind of inverting the way it works now. So I think that's really interesting. And I think that's we'll see if that becomes a trend, but I think that it's a totally new model for how royalties are paid out, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the music industry has changed so much over the last 100 years, from being something that popular music was sheet music, right? And so people would be buying the sheet music, and then all of a sudden licensing became kind of the big moneymaker in music. So very interesting how SoundCloud, YouTube, all these streaming platforms are changing the way we think about music, which gets me to one question that I had for you when I was thinking of speaking with you, and I think I know the answer already, but are you a analog or a digital man? Which is better? Are you a vinyl man, or do you prefer the digital space?
Man, I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. I'm actually, I would say, look, I own vinyl. I'm not gonna lie, I've got some vinyl, but
for shame.
I don't think you can beat the convenience of digital.
Right.
I don't think anyone can dispute that. And I can't tell the difference when I listen to it, candidly.
Right. And I think digital has a higher dynamic range, right, than a vinyl does. And vinyl just has so many different factors involved, right, in reproducing the sound.
Don't they say that you can only play vinyl a certain amount of times before it starts to degrade as well?
I think yes. I think yes is that a vinyl will wear over time, right? Because you got the physical aspect of it. But there's a different airiness to a vinyl, as opposed to, I mean, with a song on SoundCloud, it's probably going to be more refined. It's going to be cleaner. It's going to be probably a closer reproduction of what the artist wants, than opposed to a vinyl, which there's so many variables in that process. I mean, when it's transducing and changing the stylus is changing the grooves into an electronic signal and putting it through your speakers and your amplifiers or your headset. I mean, it's morphing in so many different ways. There's just so many different variables, depending on the stylus, depending on your platter, depending on your record stable. I mean, there's so many different parts, moving
Maybe
parts.
That's what makes it cool.
Yeah, that is what makes it cool. But I think that's also what makes a streaming service like a SoundCloud kind of interesting. It's because the accessibility, right? It's so convenient, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Drake can make a new track and throw it up on SoundCloud within 24 hours, and you can't beat that. I think that's what made SoundCloud so revolutionary, to be honest. Just democratize the ability to distribute your music. I mean, if you look at, we're going down a different tangent here, but if you look at how much it used to cost to make music back in the day versus now, it's incredible. You used to have a record label specifically because they owned a studio and they would pay a ton of money to be able to produce your record for you. And that's all changing. So it's the next 10 years are going to be super interesting for music.
Yeah, I like what you said about anyone with a laptop can make pro studio home quality music, so it definitely has leveled the playing field a lot more, which the competition makes it more interesting. I think, you see developments like a SoundCloud, because of the technology and the competition. So I know another question that someone had, so going back a little bit, but when we were talking about some of your technical proficiencies that you have, Joey, as an engineer, how do you continue to refine your skills as an engineer? So what do you do to push your skill set and stand out from other engineers in your field?
Yeah, that's very top of mind for me, actually, especially with just the last year, transitioning more and more into management. It's something that I always have to work on now. It used to be that, let me take a step back. When I was in college, I was coding all the time. I was completely obsessed and I wanted to get better. Even the first couple of years of my career, it was I'd go to work and code for 8 or 9 hours, and then I would come home and I'd do it for another 4. And then with the repost, I was basically just working like 12 hours a day for like 3 or 4 years. So, and most of it was coding. So I didn't feel that need. Now at SoundCloud, I'm doing less and less coding, and so I'm really hungry for it again. So I have to always be just learning and like reading. And what I try to do is, Twitter is a great place actually to see what's going on. So there's so many different frameworks and languages and tools and technologies. I realized early that you kind of have to pick a certain subset that you're going to really focus on. For me, it's JVM based languages, so Java, Scala, things like that. And I'm actually a really big fan of Spring Framework for any engineers watching. I think it's underrated. Java gets a lot of hate, but I think, I don't know, it's a very solid choice if you're trying to pick where to go. But I always just watch those things like a hawk. I'll contribute to open source projects on occasion, and read a lot of Medium articles. And just, I don't know, you have to just, it takes work. You got to follow the right people on Twitter. You got to be subscribed to the right subreddits, and just always learning. That's the pro and con of being an engineer, is if you stop learning, you'll kind of get left behind. So you kind of just always have to be, just absorbing new information and just bring it into your tool set, so to speak.
And it sounds important to maintain the passion that you have for whatever field you're in, right? Because I get the sense from you that you're very passionate about engineering, and I think that passion is driving you to be better, right? To excel. So I guess like, what fuels your passion? Like what keeps you motivated?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's sort of just, I don't know if it's a chip on the shoulder or whatever, but I'm kind of competitive, and I just really enjoy working. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I have fun with it. Like, I just enjoy it. So that keeps me going. But I think it's important to find a bigger connection to what you're working on. And I think that, with the work I'm doing now, it's like, I don't mind putting in a lot of hours because I know it's helping people, and I can see that every time if we've paid out millions and millions of dollars to creators, and they're using that money to pay their rent check, or it's their rent check, or it's they're buying groceries, so I know that there's like, we're producing actual value for people at the end of the day, and that keeps me going as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to ask too, like, for yourself, do you have any heroes? Like, is there any heroes of yours, maybe in the computer science world, or just through your life? Like, who are some people who have really impacted you and motivated you through your career or just personally?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of people I really look up to, I remember discovering Adrian Cockcroft, who was one of the early engineers, or not engineer, I think he was more like the VP of engineering or something like that at Netflix. And a lot of the work that they did around distributed systems was super groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's someone that I've listened to a lot of his talks that I look up to. Obviously, like, my dad is someone I really admire. I think he's got like a crazy work ethic that I've sort of absorbed. And actually, my uncle is the same way, where they both really like take work seriously and work really hard, and I've seen that produce results for them. And I think that like seeing that at a young age was really important for me. And then honestly, I like to be around people who are passionate and like want to make a difference. I think my co-founder Jeff, he's an amazing person, and he inspires me every day with like what he's been able to build, and his expertise and his way of seeing the world. So I think it's a combination of all those. I think there's just something special about people that make a difference that's bigger than just their own little world. Like, if you can build something that changes the game, I just respect it so much. So anytime like founders build cool stuff, I'm all about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And another question from the audience. People are really interested. And you mentioned an executive coach. So a couple of questions have come up about like a mentorship or executive coach. And so for your executive coach, they're asking, where does someone find someone like that? Or is it internal? Or is it a referral from someone? So where does someone find a mentor or a coach, if you can help guide them on that?
Finding a mentor, the best place probably is at work because it'll be free. If you can find someone you work with that'll do it for free, because it's expensive. I'm lucky because SoundCloud is an amazing place to work, and on top of like the great benefits and the vacation, it's a European company, so they're very forward thinking. They actually have a budget set aside for personal development. Can use that on things like coaching or classes, or so I was actually able to just pick that budget, and I had someone in my network that was introduced to me that was available as an executive coach, and working with her has been great. And I'm happy to, if someone wants to email me, I can intro maybe. But with her, it was really more about communication. And that to me was something I wanted to focus on, being a better communicator. So it's kind of why I hired her. But in general, I would say if money is no object, you can go out and find a great executive coach. If you're like the rest of us and you don't want to just blow money on the coach, finding someone at work that's maybe more senior that wants to take you under the wing will be super helpful, because not only are you going to get that coaching that you want to level up, but they're also going to understand the challenges you're dealing with at work, because they're also going to be working in the same company and they can give you good advice. And a lot of the problems that I remember facing earlier in my career, looking back, I'm like, oh, that was such an easy thing. I just didn't know any better. So having someone maybe at the same company that, is more senior, that can just point you in the right direction, I think it's a no-brainer if you have that opportunity to take it.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to ask, so what advice do you have for a Cal State Long Beach senior or recent grad towards landing that first position outside of college? So I know for yourself, you have a very, it sounds like you took a lot of risks and they paid off for you, but that first risk was probably on your first employer to hire you, right? So they're the ones taking that risk, saying, hey, there's no experience here, and they're going based off of their conversation with you, your skill set, what you're saying you bring to the table. So what advice would you give towards that senior where their diploma, the ink is, or that recent grad whose diploma is just still wet, and they're looking for that first job? Like, so what advice do you have for them, Joey?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. Anytime you're hiring an entry-level person, you're taking a risk, because they have no experience. They probably don't have any references, so like that's something that they're obviously okay with. If you want to help them make the decision easy, first and foremost, whatever it is you're going after, study up, just know it, do everything you can on your own to like prepare yourself for whatever the challenges are going to be. It's an engineering position and that they're, a JavaScript shop, then like level those skills up, make the decision really easy for them on the sort of skill side. And then when you're interviewing, at the end of the day, people want to work with someone that is passionate and personable and got to be just easy to get along with and care and be willing to learn. If you can get it across that you're that person, that you're going to work really hard, you're going to care, you're going to do your best, and that goes a really long way. At least for me, like I've hired more junior people because they're like super passionate about the job, and I can tell they have a good work ethic, and I'm like, this person's gonna fit in. Like maybe it'll take me 2 months to train them, but like it's gonna end up paying off. Like you want to just try to make the decision really easy for them, if that makes sense. And obviously, make your resume super sharp and clean. And if you can write a personal note with your job application, that goes a long way too. Whenever I see that, I always go, okay, this person cares. It's really about like finding someone that cares. Like employers want to find someone who at minimum is going to work really hard and have a really good attitude. And that's all you can really do. Right.
And see the Career Development Center should you need help with your resume, right?
Of course.
At Cal State, right? Well, I really value the conversation that we were able to have today, Joey. So I wanted to thank you for joining us today for the 49er Industry Chat. Would you like to make any final observations or give any advice, bearing that our audience could be students, recent grads, or long-term grads? Like, what would you like to say to them? And maybe also, how could they best connect with you should they have any questions later?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would first like to say thank you for having me. I've never actually done anything like this, so this was really cool for me. I'm happy to give back to the community. I mean, I wouldn't be here without my experience at Cal State Long Beach, so I feel like I owe it, and I'm glad to be able to help. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm not sure if my information is being shared out on this, so let me know. But if not, I can provide my Twitter or potentially my email to anyone who's interested in chatting. If you want to get some more insight in the music industry or tech or anything like that, I'm happy to be helpful. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And if you have any other questions, yeah, just get a hold of me and I'm happy to help.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, thank you, Joey, for joining us today for the Industry Chat. It's been really an insightful conversation, getting to learn about you and your career trajectory and all of your achievements since your graduation from Cal State Long Beach. Thank you all who participated in the chat for today's discussion, all you listeners at home. Thank you to the Cal State alumni for hosting this series. And I'll throw it on over to Noemi.
Thank you, Niall, and thank you, Joey. And I think if you're okay, if anyone wants to reach you via email, if they could email us, and we'll go ahead and introduce you via email. But again, they could also befriend you on LinkedIn if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Or reach out on Twitter. That's fine as well.
Okay, wonderful. Should we put that in the chat, what your handle is?
Oh yeah, I'll just Slack it.
Okay.
Or Slack it. I'll Zoom it.
Chat box.
Sorry, I'm in work mode.
So many
still.
systems. But thank you everyone for attending. Please follow us on social media. And I just dropped on a chat box our survey. I encourage you to let us know what you think. And if you have ideas for future topics, we would love to hear from you. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.